Uh, right, so I'm Nick from EveryYouth, and I think we're a very, well, I know we're a very new organisation, so I'll give you a little explanation of who we are first and then move on to the data stuff. Um, so we are a national charity focused on homeless young people. But we work in an interesting way because we are a network of delivery partners who do the work on the ground. We exist because there was no truly national organisation in this space, and because the organisations themselves struggled to work together. So this image here is something that I've seen in various parts of the world, and I know was true historically in the UK as well, in cities where you have lots of people selling the same products next to each other and then competing, hell bent to compete with those people next to each other rather than collaborating to do more. And we could see that model was occurring within the youth homelessness space, where charities who were doing more or less the same thing, sometimes in different parts of the world, parts of the country, sometimes very close to each other, were refusing to talk or share or do things collaboratively because they saw each other as competitors for local authority contracts. Clearly, this is a really sort of negative mindset and has a real impact, negative impact on the young people that we're trying to support. One of the issues that developed out of that was that the messaging the charities are using and the sector uses as a whole is quite unrepresentative. So you get lots of images of young people in doorways, and it's all very, very negative, where the reality of the young people that we support is that they are looking to the future and they have the opportunity to create a better future for themselves. So we really thought we should focus our messaging around that, and that would enable us to engage young people more proactively, and that they would share their stories with the public if they weren't being seen as rough sleepers, because that, for most of the young people, isn't their experience. All of these different factors came together to mean that there was a postcode lottery of support available. So if you happen to live in an area where a charity was really good at fundraising and was usually selling that very negative image, you could benefit from a wider range of support that was funded by voluntary income. If you lived in an area where the charity that gave the support or the housing association that gave the support wasn't very good at fundraising, then there wasn't additional support available. And we thought that's fundamentally unfair and delivered worse outcomes for young people. So what we do, we operate at scale. So we only do things that a single delivery partner can't do themselves. Um, we are scrupulously representative. We've actually employed an ex-homeless young person to sit in our comms team. She's absolutely amazing. She does all our social media, but she also sense checks what we're saying to make sure that we're not falling back on old tropes. We're hoping over the next year or so that she will lead a Youth Voice project where we can bring ambassadors, representatives from all over the UK into one place to really put the true story of youth homelessness out there in the words of the young people themselves. We use that content to help with national fundraising, and when we fund organisations, we insist that they collaborate with each other, share their data, share their experience, and we facilitate that collaboration. We also have a remit to drive efficiencies, and this is partly where the data project came from theoretically, was that we know that all of these organizations are doing a great deal of work, whether that's buying technology or collecting data or whatever it is, they're doing it all individually. So we want to bring at least some of that centrally, because it will be more efficient and it will deliver better results for the young people. Just to give you a sense of the scale we're working at, we only launched as a registered charity last year in February, and this is our reach at the moment. So we're the length and breadth of the country. We're in all the nations. We can reach more than 30,000 young people, and which makes us, I think, by quite a few measures, we have biggest operating footprint of any homeless charity, let alone a youth homeless charity in the UK. I mean, obviously that's a slightly because we don't do the work, we work alongside the delivery partner. That's an odd way of looking at it, but in effect, you can reach more parts of the country by working with us than you can by working with pretty much anyone else. So what we know, what we think, how we come at this, which is quite distinctive from the rest of the sector, is that we don't think housing in and of itself is the solution to youth homelessness. We know that the young people that are coming into homeless or having homeless experiences are doing so because they've had a really hard family life, in most cases, for many, many, many years. Yes, family breakdown is the trigger, but that doesn't just happen out of the blue. So we come at it from that point of view, so that we know the young people in question have had a lot of trauma, they've had lots of problems with their education. We also know that they do not see themselves as homeless because they haven't rough slept, and that's what people think about homelessness. We know that because they're under the age of 27, they have more neuroplasticity, greater neuroplasticity than older people, which means they're more able to learn new skills and habits. And that tells us that if we invest in these young people when they're in our services, we really can turn their lives around. But that isn't the message that's being sent to the world, and that is not how services are currently structured. And that's why data is important, because we need to prove what the reality is. So what our questions are pretty basic ones. We want to show what works. In order to show what works, we need to know who is being supported, how they are being supported. We need to agree what a successful outcome is or outcomes are, and we need to know what outcomes are being achieved. And the fact is that even on an individual organizational level, well, in fact, I would argue that all of the leading organizations in this space can't actually answer those questions today. And if we can't answer those questions right now, how can we possibly improve the service that's offered to these most vulnerable young people? And that is core to what we're doing. So this is why data is really important. This is why we're putting people together. So what did we actually do? Well, we had a small sample of our members, just under half of them. We handpicked those organisations. We had a wish list that started with the ones we want most and the ones we want least. Basically, everybody said yes to being involved. We chose the one from each nation. We wanted a mix of sizes and we wanted a mix of perceived sophistication. So by that, we mean lots of the organisations said that they thought they were rubbish at data. Others said they thought they were brilliant at data, but we wanted to really get under the skin of that and think, well, is there really that much difference if you're all delivering the same, answering similar data questions to your primary funders, which are local authorities? In reality, although we had to turn people down, turn organisations down, when it came to it, some were more engaged than others, but I suppose that is the reality of different organizational cultures and how good they are at communicating, workloads, etc. But that was the reality. What the data maturity assessment did was to provide us with an independent view of where we are as a sector. And what it showed is that each organization across the board, everybody had a functional relationship with data. They did data to get funding. In most cases, that was about funding from local authorities. And to get that funding, you don't need to be able to answer the questions that I raised earlier on. There was a general sense that data is being done to them. They didn't feel that they had any control over what they were doing. They felt that they had to just respond to various funders' requests for data rather than them outlining what the most important data is and what should be shared and what questions funders should be asking them. There was a real sense. They came into the room, virtual room, obviously, thinking that what they did in their region, especially in the different nations, was fundamentally different because their regional ecosystems are different. But in practice, the similarities overwhelmed the differences. Yeah, there's some technical things, but I mean, they're two ways round a square in most cases. but they were all facing the same problems. They all wanted to answer the same questions that we'd posed. They were all having the same huge shared frustration at missed opportunities. In all cases, it gave the data staff, who actually shared the loneliness of the previous presentation, but also they just felt that because they weren't taking control of the data, they were missing tons of opportunities, both to support young people better, both to understand the work they were and to understand the work they were doing better, and also additionally to be better at communicating with the general public and raising money. So they knew that they were missing a trick there. So we got an awful lot of very practical points that not only showed why our project makes sense, why the idea needs to be followed through, but also showed to them why they needed to buy into it and they needed to take the pain of changing how they did their data too, which I think was quite powerful. And in that, we were really lucky because we had a few chief execs that were very heavily involved in the process. So they were able to see for themselves that, yes, these are shared problems. Yes, there is a shared solution. Yes, we do need to work together to achieve it. What we're doing now, I think we're settling our vision that is for the project that is going to be a little bit like a very small but powerful UK biobank type model, but for youth homelessness. We have broad agreement from trustees. We did a strategy day quite recently where we focused very heavily on data. Our trustees as a charity and all of the delivery partners all agree that data is core and we should be putting a lot of effort into this and that they will participate in our work. We are testing some of the basic ideas around what we're doing and whether we can prove what works. And we have a pilot with DWP. We have been sending our data to we're in the process, in fact, of sending our data to DWP, so they're able to tell us what's happened to young people that we've supported in previous years. This is happening with, I think, 3 of our delivery partners, and it just so that we can show everyone else what's possible if we collect the right amount of individual level data, and that data is similar enough to work in that space. The main thing we're doing to deliver all of that is fundraising. So we've been fortunate enough to secure some pro bono technical support, like people that said they would do some of the development for us, but we need more funding to pay for project management, coordination, all kinds of, and some of the tech that we're going to need to buy. So to make that more feasible, we've chunked it down into different stages. And the first thing we're really focusing on is, can we develop a universal onboarding tool that all of our delivery partners will adopt? If we manage to do that, which is no small feat, we will be making sure we will universalizing a collection of useful data, which doesn't currently sit on the systems because the data collection tools that they currently use don't really provide data that can be compared and contrasted across the piece. So that's our first task. And of course, once the data is all comparable, it's going to be much easier to bring all the systems together. So that's where we're up to, right? I've been banned. I've no idea how long that's taken, but I hope that it's prompted some questions.